Hey, thank you for coming. My name's Chapter 3. I'm here to introduce you guys to what I hope is one of the most disturbing things I've ever done in my entire life. I decided to enter Agma Schwa's Cursed Conlang Circus with what I'm going to call twang, which is English if the speakers decided to only listen to country music and let that influence literally everything they did, everything down to their culture, everything down to how they speak, and really just mess things up as much as they possibly could. So obviously, twang is an a posteriori language, but I want to take a minute to take a look at some of the changes that have taken place since you and I have spoken English to the point where I guess Conway Twitty decided he was in charge of the language. The first thing was that if a letter had ever made a kid ask, why is that there? It's no longer there. That means any silent letters, any final E's, most of the double letters, and I will get to that in a minute because there is one double letter that has a special place. But for anything else, it's gone. Second, any letter pair that duplicates the sound of a single letter is changed to that single letter. No more GH, PH, all that other stuff sounding like an F. No. No, it's gone. It is gone. It is just an F now. Also, the H's after W's, there's no reason for them. Any initial T and TH, any T or Th, shifts to duh. Remember, any initial, so that is now dat, quite frankly. Why should it not be? T is dropped anytime it appears between two syllables and in most coda positions. Note the most. There are times when it will still appear in a coda, like at the end of a language, or at the end of a sentence, forgive me. The TH, th, between syllables shifts to a t. Next, all K's are shifted down to C's. The thing is, people got tired of asking whether that C was supposed to sound like a k or a s. And the fact that there was two k letters just made it even more confusing. So they made it simple. If it's a k, it's spelled with a C. If it's a s, it's made with an S. And if it's a K, it's gone. Later on, you'll also see that Q's are gone for pretty much the same reason. Letters are now all lowercase except for the capital I, which is considered a different vowel now. Cursive, no longer considered a necessary script, no longer anything they teach in schools, no longer needed for you to sign your name. Many words also seem to have basically kept their pronunciation. The difference is that the old vowels have been shifted to new letters, which is a significant change and is going to be a little bit jarring for most people, but it makes sense to somebody, I'm sure. And there are nearly the same number of vowel sounds in twang as there is in English, but they no longer are constrained to the traditional 5 vowels and sometimes Y. Now, a quick note on some of the terms you may hear me use here. I'm not sure how often they'll come up, but just in case I do, I don't want you to be lost. You may see references to hatted or booted throughout. These words refer either to a word or letter and denote special placement in accordance to that word or letter. Let me explain a little bit more. A word is considered hatted when it is prefixed, or booted when it is considered suffixed. A hatted letter has a diacritic above it, and accordingly a booted letter has a diacritic under it. Conveniently enough, there's only there's only one letter that is strictly hatted, and there's only one letter that is hatted and booted. Real quick, I'm just going to throw up the phonology for both the consonantal and the vowel forms. I'm not going to run through them right now. I'm trying to save what little bit of breathing ability I have for later on, mostly because I'm recovering from a cold right about now. And I don't think you want to hear me butcher most of these things until the very end. So here you go. Okay, quick look at orthography. Again, the consonants are the same that you have seen in the English alphabet your entire lives, except that K has been removed. K is always C, S is always S. X has been replaced either with KS at the end of the word, like fix, or Z at the beginning of xylophone. And Q is now also gone, being replaced either with K or Qu, C or CW respectively, depending on what is necessary for the word. At the other side, you will see the vowels and their IPA designations. Alright, now we're on to the real fun part of it, verbs, because that's what we all came here to listen to, right? Okay, so here's the first thing you need to know. I don't know anything about linguistics, so I made up the names for a bunch of cases, and you kind of have to deal with it. Sorry, not sorry. You can see here what are called the aspected auxiliaries, or whatever they're actually called. Again, I've never studied linguistics. I read one book and I skimmed most of the chapters. Here we have the shoulddative, coulddative, and wouldative aspects, and the neverative modifying aspect. It's pretty simple, like exactly what you're thinking. If you see the shoulddative aspect in front of the vowel, it means you should do it. If you see the neverative, it means you never do it. Here's the fun part. The neverative can be combined with the shoulddative, coulddative, or wouldative, but the other three can never be combined with each other. The neverative always comes before one of the other three aspects, and they always come before the verb that they're modifying. Pretty straightforward, right? Except, I do want to make a note. There's a good chance that the neverative auxiliary form may or may not have been inspired, influenced, created entirely because of the depilatory product. I'm not going into that part. Just understand that there's a chance that they're connected. So now we're looking at the verb tense. The first note is that the only thing you need to know about verb changes is that it's all based upon the root. Yes, I know that's how all verbs work. It's even simpler than that. Things got very easy once people decided they wanted it to, I don't know, be easier? I'm not real sure. So for the most part, you only need to know a verb root. Run. Not ran, not will run. Anyway, verb root. Past tense is derived from the word did and has been simplified to just a D and an apostrophe. So instead of ran, it's run. Nice and simple, isn't it? Also, did is now defunct. If you wanted to say did, you would have to use the past tense of the word do, which is just D apostrophe D-O, O, for do, so it would be to do. It's not important. I just figured you would like to know, because why wouldn't you? Future tense is pretty much the same thing. We already see it evolving now, and I decided to take it to its only natural conclusion. Instead of going to, gonna, go, it's just go. It's G apostrophe and verb. Instead of I will run, it's I go run. Again, pretty simple. Also, again, going to is defunct. Gonna is also defunct. If you're going to say going or I will go, it is I could go. So kind of like a reduplication in those particular forms, and nowhere else. So reduplication does not matter. Verb negation is derived from the word not, except as it was rewritten with the new letters. So instead of not attached to the word, you have naw apostrophe, nah. So in the case of I don't run, I not run. That was difficult even for me. I am so sorry you have to listen to me say all this. The most important part, though, is that the tenses are hatted onto the verb root. The negation is also hatted onto the verb root. In the case that you have a negation and a tense, it is negation, tense, and then verb root in that order. Gerunds are pretty simple to make in Twang. At this point, instead of adding ing to the end of a word, you just add the word be in front of the verb root. The only real note that you need to make is on hatted modifications to the verb root. Instead of taking place on the root, they now take place on the verb be. As you see, we have be ride, meaning riding. Now, if you wanted to say I don't ride or I am not riding, na be ride. I'm not riding. Pretty simple. Booted modifications still take place on the verb root as normal. We will see what a booted modification is next in probably the worst addition I've made to this language period. Now on to the trucative mode, trucative aspect. To be honest, I'm not sure which one's the correct word, so we're going with mode because I haven't said it yet. The trucative mode is very simple to understand. Did the verb take place inside of a pickup? It's pretty much the most important place for anything to happen in all of the Twang language. And some people would say, but what about church? Now listen, not everyone goes to church. Everybody's got a pickup. And all the most important things happen in that pickup. As you can see, it evolved actually from the phrase, in a pickup. And it went through the spelling reform. It became simplified to a single word, in a pick. And then became simplified again, where people decided in a pick was just too many things to say. So we just say a pick. Now this is a booted verb form. It gets added on to the end of the verb root. And as we saw with gerunds, booted forms always get added to the verb root. Period. So if you wanted to go riding in a pickup, it's ride a pick. Quite simple. Up next, we have pronouns. To be honest, they haven't really evolved much. Most of the people said that if it isn't broke, we really don't need to worry about it. And in that sense, you can see why it's still there. It's pretty clean-cut, simple, and quite frankly, this is one of those things that people were so familiar with, and there were so few changes necessary anyway, that it just kind of stuck around like it always had. The only real difference is that now the third person plural has definite, are they right here or are they away from us situations. In this case, you see M and all M, which is derived from them and all them. Spelling reforms, a little bit of changes with some of the initial sounds, and that's where you get to M and all M. Now on to noun classes. Now, the thing is, these noun classes are purely optional. You do not have to add them whatsoever. And when you do add them, they do not mess with the noun's case. They do not interact whatsoever. The noun classes are hadditive, which, as you might can guess, is added onto a particular noun. It is derived from Stetson, a very popular and successful brand of cowboy hat. It is just sti. The bootative class is derived from Saint Laurent, one of the more expensive cowboy boot producers, period. It is, after many verb changes and colloquial usage shifts, it is the boot lure. Now, the gussetive class. This is a little bit fun. It is both hatted and booted. You add both sti to the beginning and lure to the end of it. It is called the gussetive because if you're wearing both cowboy hats and cowboy boots, you are very gussied up indeed. Now, here's the thing. It's usually only added on to pronouns. That's right. It's only added on to a case when you are not directly naming the person that you're talking about. If you do add it on to someone's name, for instance, it indicates that they are doing something or wearing something that's out of their norm. If you would not normally wear a cowboy hat, but you are now, they would use sti in front of your name. Sti Agma Schwa. If you would not normally wear cowboy boots, Agma Schwa'lur. The only thing that is really impressive about this whole thing, though, is that for some reason the chief deity is always gussied. Period. For some reason he's always wearing a cowboy hat and cowboy boots. Now I'm going to go throw up some words for examples. That way you can see some of the other word reforms and evolutions that took place in Twang. First, the verb to eat. As you can probably imagine, to eat was still actually very much easily said in Twang at one point. The A was removed because it was absolutely unnecessary, and you had the letters E and T, which pronounced E and T, eat. However, people started looking at that and words like pet and met and whatever, and realized that they had a problem. And instead of trying to go about things logically and evolving things like, well thought out form, they threw away the word eat because you still had pet, and people like pets. And they replaced it with a slang word that was coming up in the ranks anyway, nom. They just changed the way it was spelled. Instead of the internet-friendly NOM, it became NAWM. The word pet was replaced by a construction later on between the words animal and friend. Now, animal stayed in the language, and it went through the spelling reform and became a almost disturbing looking word, in my opinion. The word friend, however, was dropped in favor of the Spanish word amigo. This was also done completely by accident and completely ironically. There was, for the longest time, a desire to keep English as English, and then people just kept saying Spanish words, like amigo. When they dropped the word pet, people started calling them animal amigos, my animal friend. And then the words animal and amigo just kind of got mashed together into an amigo. And now it's difficult for me to stop saying. You can also see to the side that bless your heart went through a few reforms in and of itself. First, the extra letters were taken out. So the E in heart and the S, the second S in bless, were removed. Spelling reforms hit hard, and the E in bless became an A for blast. Your became very simplified. It went through a few changes until eventually it was just the letter Y added on to the beginning of heart. But then because the H in heart was no longer a necessary consonant, because Y was doing all the work anyway, they just dropped the H, and it became blast yard. Now, the fun and accidental side effect of blast yard was that some people liked it because it sounded like it was older English and therefore fancier. So, even though they're still insulting you, they really think it sounds even much more nicer than it did when it was still bless your heart. Alright, with that down, with a couple of example words, let's take a look at a sample conversation. Hola, amigo. How you be? Nah, I be good. My an amigo did not pick potatoes. Oh, nah. He da sick? Yeah, he da sick. I da say you, he not sugar, not pick potatoes. In this example, his friend is meeting his friend. Hola, amiga. He's also asking how he's doing, to which his friend replies, I'm not good. My pet ate potatoes in my truck. That's that truckative case. Oh no, he got sick? Oh nah, he da sick. Yeah, he da sick. I da say you, I told you. He should never eat potatoes in your pickup. Alright, on to the fun part, our translated text. Please forgive me for the way I'm about to say my own language. According to all known rules of the flying, a bee should not be able to fly. Them wings been too small for to get that fat little body off the ground. But the bee flies anyway, because a bee not could what humans would think be possible. Alright, there you go. Everyone, thank you for sitting with me through this. I hope to see you all again real soon.